Hi, I am Zoe, and thank you so much for watching my show, Paranormal Extraction. Today we have on, oh my God, Russell Brinegar and Overlords of the Singularity. Now, what's absolutely fabulous about this is I call him the professor. He's not a professor, but you've got to watch this show. He has slides, and you need to watch everything just like you're in college class. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, this man knows so much that you are just going to be, your mind is going to be going blow up. Okay? All right. Thank you. Hey, hi. Oh my God. I just want to say thank you so much, Russell, for coming on today. And we are going to be talking about the singularity of, go ahead and finish the title.
Well, the title of the book you're referencing is Overlords of the Singularity, the manipulation of humankind by hidden UFO intelligences and the quest for transcendence.
Oh my God, Russell.
75 pages.
Okay, Russell.
On Amazon.com.
Okay, so now do you see why I couldn't say all that? I mean, that is crazy. So say it one more time, okay? So people, and show the book because it is very long, okay?
All right, it's called Overlords of the Singularity. We're talking about a technological singularity. The manipulation of humankind by hidden UFO intelligences and the quest for transcendence.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So I know I was telling you before this that it is like taking a college course. I mean, you are so incredibly smart. I think you're divinely blessed that I felt like I was sitting in the seats in the back and you were the professor giving the talk. So I'm not going to say a whole lot, you guys, during this, because this is something you really need to listen to really get it. So I'm going to let Russell go with it. But of course, you know me and my big mouth. I will be butting in at certain times. Okay, so let's start.
All right, let me get into this. Okay, again, the title of the book is Overlords of the Singularity. It's available on Amazon.com. And we're going to be asking the question, were modern humans engineered by an extraterrestrial intelligence? And if so, for what purpose? And a lot of people are talking about this right now, that we might have been genetically engineered. So I've got some data points to go into that. And the story of Earth starts about 4.5 billion years ago. For billions of years, we were just in an asteroid meteorite bombardment. It was highly volcanic. And then it wasn't until 500 million years ago, after the Earth had existed lifeless for billions of years, that 36 original phyla showed up on the planet. And this is called the Cambrian explosion. And we really don't know how these just suddenly appeared. Now, there's an astrophysicist named Dr. Ron Joseph who says these original phyla had all of the DNA inside them for every future evolutionary form that has arisen since then on planet Earth. Now, just as a side note, by coincidence, Dr. Francis Drake, who was the discoverer of the DNA molecule, stated that DNA is a technology, that there was no way that it could have just come randomly out of a primordial soup. And he believed in something called panspermia, that we were seeded by an intelligent extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, coincidentally, there's a channeler back in the 1930s in Nazi Germany named Maria Orsic, who stated in one of her trance sessions that a colony from Aldebaran visited Earth 500 million years ago. And it's just the 500 million years ago coincides with the Cambrian explosion, so who knows? For millions of years, this Earth was dominated by giant reptilian carnivores, first the diapsids and then later the dinosaurs. And these are thought to have been wiped out 65 million years ago by an asteroid impact in the Yucatan Peninsula off the coast of Mexico. This is an artist's depiction. Some speculate that if there was extraterrestrial visitors back then, they would have taken one of the large brain species like Troodon off planet. And this is an artist's depiction of what a humanoid reptilian would look like if it had been allowed to keep evolving the last 65 million years ago.
That's just absolutely amazing. Okay. Amazing.
And there's a fellow named Matt Tawney. He passed away a few years ago. He wrote a book called Crypto-Terrestrials and postulated that this underground race of reptilians exists on Earth and has been hidden from the Homo sapiens all these years. There's a Zulu shaman named Credo Mutwa that David Icke talks about a lot. He claims that he had an encounter with one of the crypto-terrestrial reptilians that he calls the Chitori. But that brings us to about 2 to 5 million years ago. The only humanoid that existed on Earth 2 to 5 million years ago was a little bipedal monkey-like creature with a brain the size of an orange. And the holes in their skull that they found indicate that they might have just served as cat food for the big saber-toothed tigers. So they didn't really impact the environment at all. But something strange happened at about 1.8 to 2 million years ago. And that little bipedal monkey was suddenly transformed into a much larger species called Homo habilis and Homo erectus.
Wow.
This Homo erectus species wandered the Earth for 1.8 million years with only one piece of technology, and this is what it looked like. It was a bifaced axe, and there's a speculation if they were carnivores, they might possibly have thrown this into herds of animals, but some think they were vegetarian. Others postulate that Homo erectus was telepathic. We don't really know. The late Lloyd Pye came up with something he called intervention theory, and what he postulated was because of this jump from Australopithecine to Homo erectus and other transformations since then, that instead of the hand of God guiding evolution, and instead of Mother Nature doing her natural thing with random genetic mutation and genetic drift and all the mechanisms that most people relate to evolution, they did it. So the question is, who are they? Now, 200,000 to 300,000 years ago, this species that had wandered peacefully, more than likely for about 2 million years, was genetically transformed into modern Homo sapiens. Now, this is the era that Zecharia Sitchin, he's an Orientalist that translated the Sumerian cuneiform. And the Sumerian cuneiform talks about a race of extraterrestrials who came from what they called heaven, or the sky, called the Anunnaki, who were from a planet called Nibiru that has a 3,600-year orbit. Now, some people think that the Sumerian cuneiform is mythology, but Zecharia Sitchin and other interpreters of the Sumerian cuneiform think that they were telling a racial memory of some things that actually happened. There's a researcher, Michael Tellinger, who's found gold mining operations in Africa dating back 300,000 or 400,000 years. So in this era where Homo erectus was transformed to Homo sapiens, the thinking is, in most circles, that it was a docile slave race, possibly to mine gold, and other people postulate different purposes that Homo sapiens had. Now, this is Dr. Arthur David Horn. He taught biological evolution at Colorado State for 14 years and couldn't do it anymore because he didn't think there was any way that these transformations could be natural. And he went on to write Humanity's Extraterrestrial Origins, the ET Influences on Humankind's Biological and Cultural Evolution. At some point in time, from primates, the ends of the chromosomes, which are called the telomeres, were fused on chromosome number 2. And this is what differentiates Homo sapiens from the rest of the old world apes and so forth. Now, there was
Wow.
another transformation about 75,000 years ago, from Homo sapiens to Homo sapiens sapiens, or they call it Cro-Magnon. And this 75,000 year figure coincides with a supervolcano in Indonesia that archaeologists think may have extincted Homo sapiens sapiens down to as little as 40 individuals and as many as 2,000 individuals. So we almost got wiped out by natural disaster. And by coincidence, there's a body of material called the Raw Contact, the teaching of the Law of One. Now, this was channeled by a woman named Carla Ruckert in 1981. And she says that 75,000 years ago, humanoids were brought to this planet from none other than Mars.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
There's another doctor, Dr. Ellis Silver, who wrote a book, Humans Are Not from Earth, that says there's no way that the modern species of humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, is indigenous to Earth. If we were indigenous to Earth, we'd sort of look like a Bigfoot creature with flat-footed and hairy still.
Wow.
And there's a lot of other details that he goes into. Now, 12,000 years ago to around 50,000 years ago, or even farther in the past, evidence is being unearthed by researchers like Graham Hancock and others that there was a globally interconnected megalithic civilization all over the planet that actually had aerial capability. We know from a body of maps called the Peary-Reese maps that Antarctica was mapped before the last ice age. It shows an accurate coast when it was tropical. So there was apparently an advanced species that coexisted with a more primitive species of humanoid. And some speculate that the advanced species were what we call Homo occupants, or these tall skulled people.
Yeah, I know about
Now, there are people that think that the tall skulls that they're finding are what they call cradle boarding, where populations put a board on an infant's head.
Right. Yes.
But they've actually found infants with this tall skull, and they have a different suture configuration. So they were a different species separate from Homo sapiens sapiens. Now, the big question is what happened to the globally interconnected megalithic civilization?
Exactly.
And this is what Graham Hancock is on Netflix right now on the Ancient Apocalypse. Mm-hmm. It's called the Younger Dryas Impact Event, where it's thought that a fragmented comet hit the Earth and pretty much scorched and flooded the entire Earth. Now, this real event, which was confirmed by the Greenland ice cores at about that date, 12,920 years ago, coincides with a lot of the ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe and Pumapunku that just seem to have been abandoned or strewn about. And,
exactly. Now, isn't this a 12,000 year event? Can you come on screen for a second? Switch back. Isn't the 12,000 year event where, let's just talk about, I hate to say Noah, but then, the dinosaurs and everything else. This happens every 12,000 years?
Not necessarily. This was it could have just been a random event of a fragmented comet that came by at that date.
Okay.
Because the globally interconnected megalithic civilization goes back to 50,000 years.
Oh, okay. So you're not sure about that then?
Well, there's a fellow named James Churchward who spent decades out in the South Pacific going into temples and trying to find out if the ancient continent of Lemuria existed. And he concluded that that was a real continent that housed about 65 million people that went down about 50,000 years ago. So, and the survivors of Lemuria are thought to be early Native American populations and populations of Atlantis.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you. Okay, so we can go back again. I was thinking that this had something to do with the 12,000, but obviously not from you, Mr. Professor.
Okay, so we know this event happened because of the Greenland ice cores. They found iridium and nanodiamonds at that date. Now, it's also thought that this real event was the basis for all of the world's flood legends. There's a story that's very similar to the Noah story that's dated at 4,400 years ago, and that's too early. We can determine that there never was a global flood at 4,400 years ago. that is a derivative of a 1700-year previous story from the Epic of Gilgamesh in Sumer.
Oh, wow.
It's the exact same story with the exact same details. So
Interesting.
the story of Noah and the story of Utnapishtim from the Epic of Gilgamesh are likely based on this very real event that happened 12,920 years ago. So both of those stories can't really be taken verbatim on their dating and everything.
Oh, okay.
Based on a real event.
All right. Okay, I get you.
Now, this is the same date, around 12, 13,000 years ago, that Atlantis researchers believe that Atlantis went down under the Atlantic Ocean. Now, there's a really interesting researcher named Dr. Carmen Bolter, and she just unearthed Egyptian artifacts in Turkey that were dated at about 10,000 years ago, which was way earlier than most of the Egyptologists think that those artifacts should have been. And there's a style of gold that they use. I forget the name. It starts with an O. But one of the pictures that she has online is thought to be a crown of an Atlantean princess. Now, around 6,000 years ago, all over the world.
The Anunnaki, right? Are you going with the Anunnaki now? Is that who those are?
Well, this is a reference to some petroglyphs that exist all over the world, and they're referred to as the Apkallu sages.
Okay.
This exists in the Sumerian cuneiform, and there's a mystery because they're all wearing these strange wristwatches and carrying these strange bags. So there's a lot of speculation in archaeological circles as to what that bag was for. I mean, I've heard wild things like it's a laptop.
Yeah, I know, but yeah. And they show a lot of pictures. There's a lot of pictures of those bags.
Yeah, and it's all over the world. So it's in further indication of a global civilization that existed at one point. But the Apkallu sages are collectively referred to as a group of beings that looked like this, I guess, that went around the world teaching the elements of civilization to the primitives. Now, there's a zoologist named Ivan T. Sanderson that famously said, "I think the Earth is a farm and we are the product."
Yeah, this one really blew me away. Yeah.
Also, okay. Charles Fort back in the early 1900s said, "I think the Earth is property. The Earth is owned by someone, all others warned off."
Yeah.
There's an author named William Bromley. He started researching the underlying causes of human war. And to his surprise, he concluded that there was two factions of extraterrestrials. One he called the Maverick race that has the spiritual evolution of humanity in mind. They're the good guys that are on our side.
Right.
And then the custodial race is manipulating humankind into these wars for their own purposes. So you have to ask yourself the question, what would be the byproduct of conflict and territoriality and wars and all that? But the Maverick race is a humanoid race, he postulates, that are likely related to us, and that's one of the reasons they have an interest. We're a more primitive version of themselves. And then the other race are possibly one of the races of the Greys, which are thought by many to be a biological robot. And then there's a mantis species that people report, and also a reptilian species that people report. So there's these two different factions, according to Bromley. One's benevolent, benign, and the other one is manipulating humans for their own benefit. Mm-hmm. Now, if you go back into the several thousand years ago, this is from about 2,000 years ago, we have been spilling our insides on battlefields for thousands of years.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I mean, Rome was built by, if you get into the writings of Titus Livy, he's an early Roman historian from 750 BC to 25 BC. It's bloody. I mean, Rome was built by invading their neighbors and killing all the men and taking the women.
Horrific.
And making slaves out of everybody and taking their possessions. So then later on, the one product that's expedited by all this conflict that's on this planet is technology, because the populations and tribes are always trying to outdo the other one and find better ways of killing the other tribes.
Right.
So we go into the Middle Ages with the trebuchets, and then we've got modern warfare. Now, this culminated in 1945 when we dropped an atom bomb, and it's thought by many researchers that atomic explosions actually affect other dimensions.
Okay.
And this is really when the flying saucer era started in the modern age, about the time that the bomb was dropped. It's almost as if they knew the monkeys had the matches and were playing with them.
Yeah.
They came out of their portals or their other dimensions or wherever it is they come from to prevent this whole planet from being destroyed. There are many reports of flying saucer crashes. There's one in 1942 at Cape Girardeau, Missouri, 1947 Roswell, probably the most well-known, 1948 in Aztec, New Mexico, 1953 in Kingman, Arizona. There's the best book on this is by Ryan Wood. It's called Magic Eyes Only, Earth's Encounters with Extraterrestrial Technology, and there's about 75 crashes in there that are detailed with various levels of credence. Now, the interesting thing about these crash retrievals is there was a couple of Operation Blue Fly and Operation Moondust, and Sergeant Clifford Stone, before he passed away, would go to UFO conferences and talk about his involvement with these different crash retrieval operations. And the strange thing about the technology that was gleaned from these crashes is it's just a little bit beyond what our scientists can understand. They work on it for a year or two, and then they've got it. So there's a lot of people in the UFO community that are talking about retro-engineered anti-grav vehicles, ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, and it's all technology gleaned. So personally, I think these are staged. They're not as they appear. They're being orchestrated by another level of intelligence in the UFO world.
That makes sense.
That's Colonel Philip Corso, who wrote The Day After Roswell, and he says he saw the beings that crashed at Roswell, and he's gotten a lot of heat. One of the things that I concluded that he was telling the truth is that because of all the trolling he got and all the criticism, he just kind of collapsed with it and said, you know what, the public doesn't deserve to know. And that reaction indicates to me that he had some truth that he decided to reveal in his latter years, and it was rejected by a lot of people, and it made him a little bit bitter. But here's a picture of Magic Eyes Only. That's also available on Amazon, but it's getting expensive now. I was lucky to get a hard copy of it.
Wow.
There's a fellow named Robert Solis who was in charge of the Maelstrom incident, a nuclear facility, in 1967. And he wrote Fated Giant that detailed the UFO appearance and demonstrated the ability to shut down our Minuteman missiles. So there's people that think that this was an act of dominance, that they're here to tell us that they can destroy us if they want to.
Yeah, that is, I mean, that's definitely the truth. I mean, there was one nuclear, plant that completely shut down.
Yeah. He wrote a second book called Unidentified, and there was really about a dozen or so incidents all over the world of UFOs showing up at nuclear facilities and shutting them down. And there's a more benevolent interpretation that they just want to demonstrate that they're there and they're not going to allow us to blow the planet up. Because there's a lot of evidence that this planet has been terraformed for millions of years, and they don't want their project destroyed because Earth, with 27 million species of life, is pretty much a petri dish of life samples that could be genetically altered and taken to other worlds to populate other planets.
Wow.
Now, there's the flying saucer phenomena kind of coincided with the alien abduction phenomena beginning in 1961, and also the cattle mutilation phenomena, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And Dr. David Jacobs thinks that the hybrids that are being produced are now walking among us, that they're more intelligent than the rest of humans. And if that's true, if you think about it, the hybrids are mating with non-hybrids. So it's almost like putting a drop of red dye in a swimming pool.
Yeah.
The genetically altered people are mating with the non-genetically altered people, and it results in an imperceptible change in human cognition and genetics. We've got another data point from 1956 to 1967. There was a mass contact event in Italy reported by an electrical engineer, Stefano Brescia, in his book Mass Contacts. Now, in this contact, they were approached by several humanoid races. This is actually a photograph of one of the alleged aliens from this group. His name was Kineo. Now, optical physicists have looked at this photograph and determined that this being, whoever he is 12 foot tall, and his head to body ratio is 1 to 9 instead of 1 to 7, which is what humans are. We have multiple pictures of their craft that they used. They allowed many photographs and small video clips to be taken, and the optical labs said that these were real objects about 30 feet in diameter, so it's not a hoax. And of course, you're always going to have people out there that say anything's a hoax. I go by the data points of the optical lab, so I think the pictures of the craft are real. And they said that they were from some sort of galactic federation here to help humanity develop themselves. There's another data point, an ex-Illuminati insider named Standeo. And when he was working at Pine Gap in Australia, he was made aware of 2 different species working in underground bases. He said there was a gray alien type who were a type of artificial intelligence, you want to keep that in mind, and a group that could pass for human. And the strange thing about the friendship groups, who are also called the W56 group or the Akridge, or Akri, some people pronounce it the Akri, is that in their underground bases that they would develop, they actually associated with what they called the Crusaders or the CTRs. So they're beyond dualism, where they don't have a direct physical conflict with each other, but they engage in these conflicts between good and evil by proxy, using humans. There's a Commander Sergeant Major Robert Dean in the SHAPE program, and he said one of the alien species that the U.S. military is aware of could pass for human. So Dr. David Jacobs could be right, Standeo could be right, Robert Dean could be right, that there's humanoid extraterrestrials walking among us right now. But this was the warning that the friendship group gave us. They warned of an invading group called the CTRs, or they called them the contraries or the wiros, not weirdos, it's wiros. And this means to have been built. And what they said was this was a runaway artificial superintelligence from the Orion star system that poses a threat to humanity. So that introduces the question, okay, if we're being manipulated by an alien race for their own purposes, what is that purpose? And for the answer to that, I believe you have to go back to the 50s to a man named John von Neumann. He said that most likely the intelligence that we would encounter in outer space was some sort of artificial intelligence, and possibly a self-replicating artificial intelligence. In other words, this is an AI that seeks out planets to use their resources or employ the dominant species on the planet to replicate their race technologically. In 1965, one of the early AI researchers was I.J. Good, and he talked about an ultra-intelligent machine explosion. The term technological singularity was actually coined, I believe, in 1992 by a science fiction writer named Werner Vinge, and this was picked up by futurist Ray Kurzweil. Now, he defines the technological singularity as a single period in time beginning around the year 2045, after which the pace of technological change will irreversibly transform human life. Right now, we're on that exponential curve where instead of Moore's law, where technology doubles every year, it's actually expanding exponentially. Robot entrepreneur Rodney Brooks and Ray Kurzweil present a techno-utopian view of the singularity. There are people who are trying to stay alive through supplements so that they can upload their brain into a computer system called whole brain emulation. There's a new author on the scene, an Israeli author, Yuval Noah Harari, he started out, he's married to a man that encouraged him to write books. So he wrote a first book called Sapiens, which was really good. I got that in me. And then he came out with another one called Homo Deus. Now he's making statements that are just statements of fact, like Homo sapiens is a hackable animal, and that once artificial superintelligence exists on Earth, that humans have no further purpose. And he's sort of being demonized, in my opinion, by the paranoid groups that think he's part of the World Economic Forum that's going to take over the planet and all that. But I've read his books, and he's a very smart author, and just posing warnings that AI is an existential threat. There's other authors like James Barrett, who wrote Our Final Invention, The Artificial Intelligence and the End of the Human Era. He also is worried that once artificial superintelligence exists, that it could possibly take over the planet or exterminate humankind, their makers. It's sort of like being an owl waking up in a nest of mice. So then you get into the transhumanism thing. Now, there are the techno-utopians that think transhumanism is the next stage in human evolution, and they think it is a good thing, that it's our destiny to merge with machines. It's the belief or theory that the human race can evolve beyond its current physical and mental limitations, especially by means of science and technology. The state of artificial general intelligence, which is human level AI, is farther along than most people realize. I mean, some of the robots are able to hold a conversation with context. They can tell jokes. I mean, it's really amazing what they can do.
Yeah, I just want to come back on.
Okay.
I have this serious issue with this AI, this whole AI stuff.
A lot of people do.
Okay, yeah, they do. I mean, it really scares me. Okay, I'm just going to give you an example. I can't stand Elon Musk. He says one thing. He says it's the end of our world. Okay, if this comes in, and then he makes these new brain implants. Okay,
Neuralink.
yeah. So he changes his mind constantly. And it drives me crazy. And there's something wrong with this guy. Okay, I don't know if he's what you think, if he's an alien or he's got a weird way of speaking. His skin tone is very strange. And I don't know what he's trying to do, Russell. Is he trying to mix us up by saying this is the end of the world if AI comes, and then now he's doing it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
There's a woman named Ashley. I forget her last name, but she actually wrote a autobiography of Elon Musk, and he didn't want to do it at first because he hadn't lived his whole life yet. He thought that would be more appropriate later on in life, but he agreed to let her do an autobiography if he could have some input into it.
Sure.
And it's really interesting information. Like he was reading encyclopedias at a very young age and was computer coding really early. And
Okay.
he was just a wizard with computer coding. He had a lot of information from the encyclopedias in his head. And when he came to this country, he invented like PayPal and sold it
Yeah.
for like $300 million.
Yeah.
So you got to give the guy credit for the incredible intelligence that he possesses that seems beyond the average.
Yeah.
And has become the
Well,
world's richest
like
person.
beyond, is he an alien?
Well, there's no way to really know that. I'll leave you to your own speculation.
Okay. That's what I had to say. So you can move on.
But there are people on both sides of the camp that think that AI is a really good thing, that we're all going to, the crippled will walk and the blind will see, and it's really going to upgrade humanity considerably.
Yeah.
Now, here's one of the people that is a positive believer. His name's Alex Vikolov, and he wrote a book called The Scintillite Hypothesis. And he talks about an event called the apotheosis of the omega point, where humans merge with what he calls the noosphere, that includes the sum total of the internet, and we become like one scintillite being.
No. As we're starting to get into this, yeah, no. Okay, move on. Yeah.
All right. So if that's true and we merge with machines, and this is a chrysalis universe, and this opens a portal to the world of scintillates, that would be the best possible outcome. But win, lose, or draw, the late Jim Mars said something pretty relevant, and he said somebody out there is trying to recreate their super science. So whether it's a crypto-terrestrial population that was a remnant of the globally interconnected megalithic civilization that went underground, undersea, or off planet when the Younger Dryas impact event happened 12,920 years ago, or whether it's a race from another star system
No,
that's
I
pushing
can't
us
talk
into
to
this
you.
technological singularity. We really don't know, but it is happening.
No.
Now, there's another researcher that brings in a whole other body of information, Alana Freeland. She wrote a book, Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. Now, her claim is that through the chemtrails, humans already have aluminum, barium, nanoparticulates in our system.
Yeah, this has been going on for a long time, and I'm also
Right.
against chemtrails and know quite a bit about them. But
Yeah.
I was talking to you about it. Now, are they dropping this stuff to make our bodies become more accustomed
There's
to?
just theories about it. Nobody really knows if
Oh,
they're
really?
out on the inside of whatever operation there was, but there's speculation that the Navy needed over the horizon three-dimensional radar, and they needed the atmosphere to be electrified,
Okay.
turning the atmosphere into a superconductor. But there are adverse effects like Morgellons disease. This is a blow up of Morgellons.
Yeah, I mean, this is bad. I mean,
People are getting lesions. Well, the nice thing is when you die, anything in your body like that goes with your body. I'm just being cremated, so I'll be on the other side, free from this whole situation.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
I met author Lynn Caston at the Stargate to the Cosmos UFO convention, where I was speaking as well. And we had dinner together, and he believes that the reptilians are behind it, and they're trying to create a lockdown planet and turn the humans into a slave race.
Oh my God. That
So
doesn't
who's going
surprise
with
me.
the lockdown planet and who's going on to the positive Earth? Well, the low vibe people, the evil people, the ones that dominate other people, who the sociopath, the psychopath, they seem to be allied with this negative agenda. And they will be here likely for the lockdown version on that timeline. Now, there's another faction of the human population.
This is the part I believe in. Okay.
Yeah, there's another faction of the human population. They, and I'd like to say we, are ready for a peaceful, benevolent, globally unified civilization.
That is only, Russell, that's only if we wake up and
well,
we're not staring at our phones and we're not doing, we're just going to work and not thinking about this stuff. There has to be a serious, enlightenment phase of the planet, which, everybody I interview is talking about.
Right. The people that are interested in raising their consciousness, the meditators, the yoga people, the vegans, the people that want to love animals, not eat them anymore, the people that are actively calling out to the benevolent angelic forces, if you will, they will likely be spared from everything I've read from this negative.
Right. Phase. So that's similar to a rapture.
Yeah. People are.
I mean, if you want to look at it that way, right?
Yeah. People are looking towards what they're calling the solar flash. There's something called a precessional wobble. We're actually traveling around this galaxy at 514,000 miles an hour. And even at that speed, it takes 230 million years to go all the way around the galaxy. We're sort of the hillbillies of the universe. We're on an obscure arm way out in rural Milky Way.
Oh my God.
And, it would be easy to take advantage of because maybe not that many people know where we're at. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
right.
This precessional wobble happens every 25,000 years or so. And by coincidence, that's where the raw material says the ascension cycles are. According to the raw material, the law of one, the ascension cycles were established 75,000 years ago. And in the first 25,000 years, nobody made it. And then in the second 25,000 years, which would be 25,000 years ago, there were people that could have ascended to a 5D Earth, but they decided to stay back behind and help the others. And they're what's referred to as the Great White Brotherhood. Now, this is according to...
Yeah, I know all about the Great White Brotherhood.
So, yeah, you mentioned the rapture. That there is a correlation between the solar flash and the dimensional shift. So, apparently, timelines might be bifurcating. There's one positive, globally unified civilization that lives peacefully with one another on a 5D Earth, or what Michio Kaku calls a type 1 civilization that's non-military, they don't use money. I mean, they're just beyond all that.
Right.
And then there's the other population where you don't want to get caught up in that. So that's my presentation. My book is Overlords of the Singularity, and it's available on Amazon, but that's...
Yeah, let's have you come back on the screen again. I mean, now I think you guys all understand why I couldn't, like, interject. I mean, because this is crazy. This is like sitting in, like I said, and listening to a presentation. So, I couldn't jump in here and there because you were moving at kind of a pace where I had to really listen, and I didn't want to jump into asking a question because you have to pay attention to what you're saying. So all of this is in your book.
Correct.
Oh my God. How many pages is it?
It's 545 pages. This whole thing got started. I was a hard science guy until August the 18th of 2009. And I experienced a near-death experience from a heart attack where I had a glimpse of the other side. I was in the presence of ethereal beings from the other side and also a transcended version of myself. And ever since then, I wound up going to the hospital and getting 2 stents placed, and I've been fine since then on some medications. I had to take Plavix and metoprolol and different, blood thinners and all that. But I'm off all the medications now. It's been, a decade and a half.
Wow, that's great.
Time's going by fast. But what happened to me in 2009 got me interested in things that I might have ignored my whole life that turned out actually to be true.
Right.
And I looked into ghosts. I spent the night at the Rhodes Hotel in Atlanta, Indiana, where people had EVP equipment.
Right.
And then, so I was into the ghost thing for a while, the ghost research, and eventually through the book that Kenneth Ring wrote called The Omega Project, he connected near-death experiences to alien abduction experiences. So I started looking into UFOs. I read everything that Jacques Vallée wrote, John Keel.
Yeah, and you weren't doing any of this until after you experienced a near-death experience. So, I mean, people do come back with these superpowers. Okay, it's known. Do you think that happened to you? And I have one more question. How many books have you read?
Well, it started out, I read books on ghosts and it talks about the vortexes and the etheric revenants, and, we can get into all that. But when I started reading UFOs, I started with the best, Dr. Jacques Vallée. So I read everything that he ever wrote. And then John Keel. I've got collections. By the way, I have a Facebook friend, Andy Colvin, and he has collections of John Keel's writings on Audible, on audible.com.
Oh, wow.
And I listen to those like rock and roll records. There's The Flying Saucer to the Center of Your Mind, The Outer Limits of the Twilight Zone, The Persepacious Percipient,
oh my God.
Mysterious Beings from Time and Space. I mean, you can really learn a lot. Another fellow that I liked was Brad Steiger, because at 11 years old, he had a similar near-death experience where he fell off a tractor and his head got chopped off by fire equipment. His scalp got chopped off, and he popped out of his body and looked at this little child being maimed. So that experience is what got him into the paranormal. And he's one of the most prolific paranormal writers. He was slept by his 1922 Underwood typewriter and wrote over 200 books.
Wow.
About UFOs and the paranormal.
Wow. Wow. How many books? How many books have you read?
What?
How many books have you read?
Approximately 300.
Okay. Oh my God. Unbelievable.
And then there's 250 plus audio books in my phone that I've listened to at least once or twice.
So you're talking like 600.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you were divinely blessed by this gift. I mean, you're gifted. Do you
my
believe
interest definitely changed. And I found out through the NDE literature, near-death experiences, that some of the changes that happened to me after that are very common. Like it's very common to receive the choice of whether to cross over or whether to stay here. that happens to a lot of people, and it happened to me. And since I had a glimpse of the other side, I thought it'd be really cool to keep living in this three-dimensional reality with that knowledge.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, another thing is I lost my fear of death. I actually look forward to my next exit point.
Okay.
The next
Wow.
exit point I have, I don't think I'll elect for surgical intervention unless I want to stick around for my wife and dogs. That might hit me at the last minute. But I actually look forward to my adventure on the other side.
Wow. Yeah.
So, that's common for near-death experiencers, that they lose their fear of death. I don't like pain, but I don't fear the dying process. And I became intensely interested in animals. I never was a dog fan, and I have two Yorkies now. I have a little black Yorkie poo named Sadie, and God, it's going to hurt if anything ever happens to them. Sadie just had to have 19 teeth pulled, and it about killed me. I cried all day.
Yeah, I know.
And, but I never was conscious that animals were fellow creatures just like us.
Wow.
That the only real difference between humans and animals is our brain configuration is a little different. But I've learned a lot from dogs, walking them every day, at least once, possibly twice. They really live in the moment. They don't hold grudges.
I know.
I mean, there's so much you can learn from having a close, intimate relation. I sleep with them. I cuddle with them. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, wow. I mean, you had a lot of information. I really appreciate you coming on because you're so highly intelligent, and there are going to be people out there that are going to want to listen to this type of, which I haven't really had anybody on like that. Maybe one or two that are like you. So they're going to like this because you have all of these slides and you go through each step. Instead of just talking about an abduction, you're starting from ground zero and you're moving all the way forward.
Looking at the big picture and how it all connects with each other.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. And I know we're going to have you on again. Okay. I'm not sure when, but we will. And so I am going to say to everybody, don't forget Russell's book. Please show it one more time, Russell. And if you're really into this stuff, it'd be great for you to go to Amazon. And we look forward to having Russell on again.
Okay. Anytime.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.